What's a dark secret you only learned about after that person died? For much of my childhood, my mom helped out an older lady named Mary with groceries, doctor's appointments, etc. It began as a charity effort through her church aerobics group, 90s, but the rest of the group lost interest and my mom kept it up for many more years. Mary's family was a mess, poor all around, with various members either strung out or in various states of dysfunction. Her great-granddaughter actually lived with us for a while, and my mom did something with, or for, Mary probably 3 to 4 times a week. When Mary eventually died a few years ago, my mother went to her funeral and met Mary's sister for the first time and got to talking. My mom knew that Mary had been married and widowed twice. What she didn't know is that Mary's first husband was a gangster and that he died when Mary took his gun and shot him in the head. She managed to get herself committed on mental grounds rather than incarcerated and met her second husband at the mental facility. Added a few add-ons. Although it was not explicit in the story as I heard it, there was an implication that the first marriage was abusive, not a stretch to imagine for a Baltimore mobster in the 40s. According to the sister, one day husband number 1 was getting picked up by his friends to go do mobster things and left his holster and pistol inside. He told Mary to go get it, and she did, then shot him with it in broad daylight outside their house. Apparently, she was always a talented actor/manipulator, which rings true, and put on a good show at the trial, hence the very light consequence. My grandfather always told me growing up that his sister died after being struck by lightning. He always had great, vivid, not always child-friendly, but definitely colorful stories, and I thought nothing of it. Fast forward 10 years, I'm talking to my dad about it after doing some digging through old photos. I told him what his father had told me about his aunt and commented on how sad it was. After 5 minutes of laughing so hard he couldn't catch a breath, he told me that she had actually blown herself up in a meth cooking accident. Oh, that's a knee slapped. Alrighty. Meth lab explosions. Always look on the sunny side. That's what I say. Our farm caretaker always wore a ball cap. Always. For a 40-year plus history. He died from a tumor on his scalp that had eaten into his skull. He never took his hat off in public. None of us had any idea. Worked the front desk at a plastic surgery center. Guy brings in his mom because she had a bad smell they couldn't get rid of. Turns out to be skin cancer on her head. Apparently, it had been like that for 10 years, but she didn't want to bother anyone. The surgeon I worked for had to sew the skin flaps together after the cancer had eaten through the top of her skull and parts of her brain. Old people are like this all the time. I'm an RN, and the amount of times I've heard, "Well, I didn't want to bother you," or "I didn't want to wake you up," is ridiculous. I literally get paid to pay attention to you. I have too. My grandfather was a bastard his entire life. Abusive and cruel. The family lived in poverty, very hand to mouth, and scraped for everything they had, which was not much. On his deathbed, he told my grandmother that he had been hoarding money his entire life. He saved a couple of million. Grandma took herself on a trip around the world and then gave the rest of the money to a zoo. Gave none to her children. Grandfather and grandmother had a 4th child who was born with disabilities. Grandfather declared he would not have made a child with disabilities, therefore the child was a product of an affair. He allowed the child, whose life expectancy was a few years, to come home, but demanded his wife ignore the child. My dad and his siblings, who were still young children themselves, provided all the care until the child died in toddlerhood. My poor dad. Between his home and Vietnam, he was so messed up. He couldn't rise to the challenge of sticking around and parenting. But damn, after all he experienced, I give him credit for never laying a hand on us, trying his best and then leaving when he knew he just couldn't. Not so dark. But as we were cleaning out my grandfather's car after he passed, we found a huge tub of cheese puffs, something he wasn't allowed to have because of his strict diet, in the trunk. I knew a guy with diabetes who had been drinking Sprite. This was before the sugar-free ones. From under the shop counter he worked. He died of complications related to diabetes. Edit. I'm bad at all things medical. My wife wrote diaries the entire time she was battling cancer. I learned how she felt about her friends and family after she died. I had to hide certain entries from her parents after she died. Edit. Victoria died to inflammatory breast cancer. It was a death sentence. Donate what you can to breast cancer research. Also, Obama's speech in LV was incredible. Fucking vote. And watch his speech on YouTube if you want some inspiration in your life. Love from Canada. Not saying this is definitely the case, but it could be she was just venting her frustrations in her diaries and omitting the parts of her that still loved everyone. When I write about my experiences on paper, I tend to focus on my negative emotions towards my family, because I find them difficult to articulate, specifically because I love them so much. I don't deny that my family has severely mistreated me, but I do think that someone going through my diary would get a bit of a harsh interpretation of my feelings. I love my friends and family, even those that abandoned me because I came out and became depressed, but those are not the feelings I write about. Maybe your wife did the same? She did. She was also on a ridiculous amount of painkillers, ketamine, morphine and oxynew and codone. The entries that I hid were when she was slightly out of it. My grandfather was apparently very abusive to my grandma and my dad when he was growing up. He was also a heavy alcoholic at the time, and I think that played a large role in it. At some point, he stopped drinking altogether, and that apparently helped things a lot, and their family life stabilized. It's just weird because I only ever knew him as a sweet, frail old man who wouldn't even curse in front of me. But he had his demons and likely caused a lot of emotional damage to my father and grandmother. My father's situation was similar. My grandfather was an alcoholic and was abusive, according to my grandmother. They divorced in the 1970s/1980s, and he remarried a woman he met when he got sober. It ended up being rather painful when he died, because their divorce ostracized my dad's mother and siblings, and my grandfather put all his effort into being a good man to his new wife and stepchildren. At his funeral, his step-granddaughter cried during her speech about what a great grandfather he was to her and how much they loved each other. And all I could think was how unfair it was that I, his blood granddaughter, had to be denied this experience. I never got to know him. Write in the comments what secrets you learned after the death of a relative. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you in the next video.